welcome back to another tutorial of mine. Today I'll be taking you through how I made this Oreo advertisement. It was for my portfolio, didn't pay me to make it, but it's a bit of an interesting video. It involves animations as well as liquids, so I thought I would take you through the overall process from making a video from start to finish. It's quite a basic video, so it won't be anything too complicated, hopefully. The next video I'm making, which is in rendering stages right now, is the Razer Chroma version 2, and that one has some advanced stuff which I really want to dive into. That's also just for portfolio. They didn't pay me to do it, but once that's done, I'll really go into the advanced stuff. But today I like to keep it a bit surface level. Don't want to go into anything too complicated. I just want to sort of show you the basic processes. It's also a very basic video, so it's a perfect example to use. So generally, I usually start with the sound. Sound usually, the video usually works a lot better if it's played towards the sound in terms of cuts, animations, stuff like that. So I always try and pick the soundtrack first. And in the past, I've been stuck just going through hundreds of songs trying to find the right song. So that might be a I almost said sticking point now, but that almost might be a crutch for some people if they spend like all this time trying to find the music and never actually pick something, which I've done before a lot of times. So generally I just try and find something that works okay. I usually go through some references on YouTube. I have like a playlist of different references of like Oreo adverts and stuff like that, and then I can sort of figure out what sort of music I want to use. Once I found something, I try and cut it up to a very short time frame. I'll show you now. If your video is quite long, like a minute or so, it depends on the person, but I find that I'll never finish that video because it's a lot of work to make something like this. So I generally go for like 20-30 seconds now. If it's any longer, I know that there's low chances that I'll go through the effort of doing that whole thing. So I usually start with the sound, cut it up to like 25 seconds. Here I use the intro, and then I use the outro section of the song, and then just put them together, sync them together. So the intro starts and then the outro last section goes, and so I'll play it for you so you can actually see what the video looks like. All right, so just order these. It should be in the render section. So here you can see I have everything ordered very nicely in terms of I have assets, which is like my backgrounds, time blocks. I'll explain what the time blocks are. And then I also have an Instagram composition, which is basically just this sequence here. Place in another one, and that's cropped down for Instagram. So I don't really have to make any changes there. I can just render out that version for Instagram. By the way, if you want to see what I'm doing like on a day-to-day basis, I update Instagram the most because that's where most of the people that I know in person as well follow me. So if you want to see that stuff, follow me on Instagram at Arthur Visuals, and you'll find all that Gucci stuff there. Footage, I usually have a footage folder if I'm using actual real-life footage. But in this case I don't even know I had that folder there. And then the linked comps are for the After Effects compositions. I used to actually render out the After Effects footage in 10befores and then import them, but recently I found it's just easier to just import the After Effects compositions themselves. So once you update it in After Effects, it'll update in Premiere Pro. And then here I have the renders, which is the actual Cinema 4D renders. And then sound folder for the different sounds and music and stuff like that, sound effects. So that's basically everything that's in this project. And then I also have the Oreo 4K sequence. Sequence settings here is 4K resolution, ARI cinema, editing mode, 24 frames per second. Don't think I've ever not used 24 frames per second. It's just like the perfect frame rate. If I had faster render times and stuff, maybe I'd bump it up to like 30 or something like that, but I've never really needed to go higher than that. And 23 0.97 that just it's difficult to. It's not difficult. It's just an effort to try and time things and stuff. If you have like that point, those points and stuff. So I usually just round it up to 24. Sample rates 44/100. Don't really need anything higher than that. Then my video previews are 1920. They would be they're usually half the size of the actual frame size, and also my test renders usually around the size of my actual viewport here, so this should be a bit lower actually. So it should be like 920, because that's what your actual your preview range is here. You don't need it to be super high if your preview range is super small. It depends on your screen resolution stuff as well. But yeah, so that's my sequence settings. And so I usually start with sound, and then I try and figure out where I want all the cuts and stuff to be. So I made up this method called time blocks, where I actually insert some sort of footage into the scene. I usually just go with either black video here, or I go with a color matte, which is basically a background, and then I use that just for the timing of all the sequences. So then I know how long each of my Cinema 4D timeline should be. This is actually getting a lot more complicated than I thought it would be. This is the basic video, by the way. The Razer Black Widow one is much more advanced. So hopefully that one isn't too crazy, but this one is. I'm trying to be as basic as possible. So yeah, create these time blocks, and then I figure out where I want all the cuts to be. So they're usually at certain beats of a song. You can find the rhythm of the song and then cut them up at certain points. So here I'll go. So here it sort of cuts whenever there's that certain primary beat, and then also a little bell that goes off. So here I'll hear a bell when it cuts. Then there's like a beat there. There's another bell, bell. So it's basically cutting in a very there's a certain amount of time in between each cut, which creates a sort of rhythm, which is just more pleasing to the eye. If each clip was like random, if there wasn't a rhythm towards the cuts and stuff, it wouldn't really look as good. And if you don't know much about video editing and stuff like that, it's just a nice, easy way of making your video footage pleasing. So I'll show you the other audio that I had at the start and sort of just never used. Obviously it's not cut to this audio now. So I had that one. I hope I don't get any copyrights because of that. So, and here's just basically another one of my own edited versions of the song. But I ended up going with this one because it was copyright free, which meant I could monetize the video and stuff like that and wouldn't have to worry about anything. So I've gone and added time blocks. There's not really any, I made up the method, so it's not like I've stolen it from anywhere. And then, yeah, so all these blocks are basically giving me information on how long I want all of my sequences to be. So if I go and hold down Control and click here, I can change the timeline viewer until I hit the frames. So now I know that this sequence is 45 frames. I'm busy pointing at the screen here, but you can see duration, it says 45. The next sequence should be 43 frames. The next sequence should be 45 frames again. And now I know how long each sequence should be and how many sequences I need. So here I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 sequences. And I know the duration of each of them. So here I just have intro text. It's very simple, made inside of After Effects. As you can see, I just went in. I don't want to get into all the details of everything because that will just make the tutorial a lot longer, but it's basically just basic text animated on. And then the outro as well is kind of the same process, except here I'm using footage. So here I have a render of a scene of some Oreos coming down. It is in 4K, so it'll be a bit slow to play back and stuff. Hope you guys understand. But here I just have footage that's coming down, and then it sort of comes off the screen there, and also sort of animated the oh, I didn't. But yeah, it's coming down like that, and then I also have a mask layer just to mask out that. And then behind it, I have some text. As you can see, the text is there. And then I'm also using a camera, which is linked to two nulls, one for the camera position and one for the POI. POI is, that's another term I came up with, point of interest. A lot of the time I just come up with my own methods because people come up with dumbass methods on the internet, so just make my own. Anyways, so here you can see it's coming down like this, and then I also have some particles on a solid layer here, like that, and then it all comes down together. So I have a camera so it looks like the particles and stuff are below everything, and then the text also is revealing underneath like that. This could be its own separate tutorial, so I'm not going to go and show you how exactly I made all of that, but basically taking you through the layers. And then here you have a nice outro. So that's the outro part. And then you hit save. Let's say if I want to update the one in Premiere Pro, I can just go here, remove the text, hit save, and then it will update here. Yeah, see it's not there anymore. And the reason why it's now so small is because I changed the preview. I changed the stopping preview. I don't even know what this type of preview is called, but the one where when you stop the animation to half. So if I change it back to full, that'll double now because it's on full resolution, it's not on half. And if I want the text back, just bring it back in, save, and then boom. And if your computer is slow when it's playing this back, you just go sequence, render effects in and out, and then it'll render out all the compositions, and then you can preview it in real time, which is quite nice. So now we can actually get into the 3D stuff. That's just the whole setup of the video editing. So the way I set up everything generally is I have some animatics, which is basically all the sequences for the 3D scenes. So I have a folder called animatics, and then here's all the different sequences I have. I've had projects where I've had probably like 60, and only like 11 of them actually show up in the final. So those you could call like deleted scenes and stuff like that. But yeah, so I just have animatics, and I keep them very ordered and sequence based. I don't give them special names and stuff because a lot of things can change. I just keep them very ordered. So animatic 1 down to 11 in this case. I only ended up using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. And then where was I? So there's the animatics folder with all the different animation, all the different sequences in them. I just call them animatics because of animations, I don't know. And then I also have the renders, animatic renders here. And then here I have the number of the sequence, and then A, B, C, D for the different renders I do. Let's say I change a few things, or I bump it up to 4K for the final render. Then I have here, you'll see it says 4K. That means those are the final 4K renders. And I also have the masks for the multi-passes and stuff like that. So it's just A down to Z. If I ever reach Z, so it's just different versions. Just in case I want to go back to a version and see what that looked like and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's animatics, and then the animatic renders, and yeah. So here I have a scene. This is the scene 1D. Here you can see animatic C1, and that's basically just a rotation of the camera. I guess I can take you through that. I don't want to go into too much detail because I'm feeling this tutorial is going to be like hours long, but I'll basically just show you this Oreo. This Oreo is quite simple to model actually, and I say that a lot, and then people complain that they actually dislike the video because I didn't show them how to model it. But to me, this looks very simple to model. I don't understand. The texturing part is the difficult part, not the modeling. So here you can see we have an Oreo, and that's pretty much the base of it. Looks fairly simple, just a cylinder, and then you smooth it out. Obviously add different depths and subdivisions, different extrusions, and then on top of that is just this thing. The way I made these is you basically take like a square, you turn it into a triangle, you bevel the edges. So here's a triangle with beveled edges. You throw it inside of a cloner, you add 3 of them, and then now you have 3 of them in rotation. So now you have 3 of these because you threw it inside of a cloner, and then you just put that inside a cloner and you clone it radially around here, and that's how you have that piece. And I pretty much just copied that for everything else. I just made cubes, beveled all the edges, and then just cloned them all the way around until it came up with this Oreo. And this Oreo is just simple text, so that's also fairly simple to model, as you can see. And the texturing side is more tricky. I don't even know if I can explain it. But let's see what we have. So I have Milk 1, which is the chocolate, which is just a random brown color I picked. Didn't even bother with that. Literally didn't bother with the liquids. I just made it a random brown color, and it's a glossy material. And then the milk is the white one. This one I paid a bit more attention to. In this render, it's not. It's not in this render. It's not updated. But if I go to this one, where's this one? Animatic 7. You see how simple the naming of everything can be. It just makes your life so much easier. So this one actually has a very milky color. It has a slight tint of yellow, and here I paid more attention to it. I forgot to update it in this one, but yeah. But otherwise it's just a white texture set to glossy. The Oreo, this texture is complicated, so I don't know if I can even get into it. As you can see here, there's a lot going on. But yeah, so where do we even start? Let's see if I can find this diffuse color. So I have an Oreo, I have a glossy material with a noise map inside it. Let's bring up the live viewer. Yeah, this is a bit complicated, so I don't want to get too into it, but I'll sort of show you. Okay. Sorry, my computer is a bit slow. You can't blame it. It has a lot going on right now. So let's just change this back to path tracing. Cool. I have a noise shader in the diffuse with the gradient for the different colors. So I should probably just break this down one by one so you can sort of see what's going on. Cool. So here you can see the noise shader. Just add some variance to the color, and then on top of that I have a specular material. Well, not specular. I just have specular, which just adds some reflections to it, and then roughness turned up to 1. And then in here I have some bump maps going on. So if I go to the bump section, boom, boom, boom. So here I have 2 bump maps mixed with a dirt, mixed with another 2 bump maps. So there's 4 different bump maps mixed with a dirt. So that's a bit complicated. I don't even know if I can even explain that, but it's just different scratches, textures blended together with the dirt so that they blend on certain areas of the Oreo and stuff like that. It's a bit complicated. And then here I also have another dirt going in this top one here. So I can't get into that. That's just too much for me to even process. And then I also have a normal map as well. This should be a normal map. Well, that's strange. Then I have that mixed with a diffuse milk material. This should be diffuse, but it's not. And then I put it inside of a mix shader. And then inside the mix shader, I just use different dirt maps to add some white marks on top of that. And then that's how I ended up with this. And then I also have a displacement map which is a noise shader, and then I bump that up to 4K, and that just gives it some nice bumps around the top. So yeah, I don't really explain anything there, but you can understand I have a lot more else to explain than texturing. So it's just bump maps everywhere mixed with noise shaders. So yeah, and then that's the Oreo. Here you can see I have an HDRI with a white HDRI for the background. Then what I did is I doubled the exposure. I wanted the background to be white. So what I did is I doubled the exposure, and then I just turned up the highlight compensation just to sort of make things a bit more even and not blown out. Then I also have some post-processing, which really doesn't do much. My camera settings are generally like f-stop 5.6 with some motion blur on top of that. And yeah, these particles are missing. Let's just go and find them quickly. Work 3D Oreo adverts, and then we can go and find it. This is scene 1. So if I go into simulations, scene 1, and then I search, I should find it. Cool. So now it's just going to load in all the particles. There is motion blur attached to it, so it might be a bit slow. Cool. So now we have our simulation as well. This is all in one scene, by the way, so you can see why I'm rushing through things. So here we have our particles done in Realflow. So yeah, the motion blur was, the way I got the motion blur to work is inside, you attach an Octane tag onto the mesh, and then here you can go into your vertex speed, and then you can use your actual vertex maps that they give you when you export this into, when you convert this into a mesh. They give you vertex maps, and then you can use that information to get correct motion blur on your actual liquids. So okay, so I've gone and set up a scene inside of Premiere Pro. I know how long I want the scene to be. Then now I know how long I want the sequence to be. So I set up a camera animation. So I know the scene should be from frame 37 to frame 79 in this case. And it's at 24 FPS, as you can see. And now I know, okay, now I've got my animation done. Now I want some liquid to actually fall on this. So you go and you take your object, you just collapse it all into one object, preferably something low poly, and then you call it your collider for your liquids. You go and export your liquids as an SD, and then you go inside of Realflow, you import that. I usually export it 10 times the scene scale, and then when I import it again, I just divide the scene scale down by 10, just divide the scene scale back down by 10. Because Realflow struggles with small scenes. I don't have Realflow 10 anymore, so I've been struggling with this Realflow 2015, but it did the job. Didn't do a good job of it, but it did a good enough job, I guess. Hopefully I can try and purchase Realflow 10 one of these days, and then I can actually create some good simulations. But you can see we have our objects. Not going to explain everything, but basically I have some liquids going, like so. Boom. There's a lot of Realflow tutorials out there, so you can learn how to actually use this program if you want to. Got some liquid going, and then I also have some drag force, which is basically air resistance, some gravity, some K isolation, which kills all the small particles that fly away, and then I have a K volume, which is basically kills all the particles that go outside this box. So here, if the particles like are falling down there, it'll kill them so that it's not simulating particles falling down into nothingness. Then I also have a noise shader, which just adds that variance. As you can see, it's like sort of twirling. So that's what the noise shader does. And then I converted all that in, I converted the particles into an actual mesh like this, boom, like that. You go simulate it out, it will export, and then that's pretty much the basic gist of the Realflow scenes. Yeah, so we can close that. We don't need that anymore. You import it into Cinema 4D, and then you get your actual thing, and then you render out this. This is for previewing. You'll generally it would be 4K if it was final, but it's just for previewing, so it's that size. Then you go and render it out into your animatic, your scene name, and then the version it is. So if it's either A, B, C, D, whichever the next number is, next letter is, and then you render it out. So once that's rendered, you can import it inside here. And I generally render out test versions, usually half or even like a fourth of the final resolution. I usually actually just render it out the actual preview box here size, because it doesn't need to be any bigger than that, which is generally 1920. Well, 920 is what I usually do it as. And then you'll have a nice previewed version, which is bad quality. So I'll usually turn down these samples down. I'll even go to direct lighting sometimes, like this, that much. And then you go and render it out, and then you have a nice preview like that. And sometimes you can actually even go and import your actual scene as a Cinema 4D file, and then you can preview it that way. I've been doing that with clients recently. It just saves time for the both of us. So here you just go and, ooh, that's the Razer Black Widow Chroma, sorry. This should be Oreo. The Razer video is going to be so much longer and so much more complicated. I'm actually scared. Where is this thing? Animatics. So here you can actually go and import this, and then you can get a nice preview of it as well, rather than rendering it out. So I'll show you what happens when I import this quickly. Yeah, the power of 4K. No one can actually view it, but it slows down your whole workflow. So here you can see we have an actual preview, and you can actually extract your scene data and stuff for particles and stuff like that. So yeah, you can preview it that way and get some nice previews instead of actually rendering them out, but that's for another video. My render settings are standard. I've been using a lot of adaptive sampling recently. It saves so much more time with your final renders. And I have so many tutorials I should be making right now on all these things. I don't know why I don't. So you can see we have some adaptive sampling going. All the green areas won't be rendered anymore, which just saves you a lot of time. So from this point, it'll just be rendering the actual Oreo. It won't be rendering the background and stuff, which just saved me so much time, especially when you're rendering out in high resolutions. That really helps. So now you can see for the rest of the render, it's only going to be rendering the parts that aren't green, which just saves you a lot of time, and it's rendering out the parts that actually need rendering. So yeah. Okay, so how far are we? 30 minutes. Cool. So yeah, so you basically do the same process for all your scenes. You sort of figure out where you want all your animations to be. So you get your animation, your camera right, you go and import these into Realflow, you get the liquids to go. So here, I moved the project around just to make things easier for you guys. So it's sort of lost where all the parts are for the information here. So let me just go and find it again. Oreo simulations, this is scene 7. So I can go here, boom. Let that import. I can go here, boom. let that import as well. And then there we go. We have our actual scene. And all my scenes are pretty much the same settings, just slightly different things. It's like your shutter speed and depth of field and things like that, but they're all basically the same settings. PNG, 16 bits. Yeah, so once all the renders, once all the I'm losing track of thought now. Once all the test renders are done and you know what your final animation will look like, you go render it out in full resolution, and then you get a video like this. Dun. This scene I can show you quickly. 4D. I just popped it inside a clone and used a time effector and a random effector, and then I happened to get this really nice thing actually pointing at the camera, and then I got this. So this is a great composition. It was just by luck that it actually happened to hit the camera there, and I just sort of adjusted things a bit and played with it slightly, and then I got this final composition here. Here I'm going for a 2.35 widescreen aspect ratio, which gave it a nice futuristic sort of, not futuristic, but modern sort of feel to the video, and it also saved me render time since I don't have to render it out full 16:9. And it was also interesting with composition and stuff like that. You can see I've sort of thought out the composition of the whole video. And yeah, there's really not much else to get into. This last scene here does look a bit fancy, so I guess I'll try and explain that. So here, this is scene animatic 11. Boom. So here I have a cloner, and I basically just animated this, I don't even know what this is called, but that thing. And then I just animated it so it goes closer, closer, until eventually it stops and sits like this in the end. So if I made the scene longer, instead of 36 frames, it'll go and sit like that. And then what I've done is I've used a plane effector. Where is this thing? Can't even see it. Fall off. Visible. Cool. So I've used the plane effector to affect the rotation. So as soon as the Oreo passes that box there, the rotation will stop, as you can see, and then I'll just sort of rotate and spin until it all comes together like that. The camera is placed on a circle. The circle moves up, and then it's looking at a target over here. So if I go and make this a cube, and then the target is moving down as the camera is moving up, and then it's all like animated with curves and stuff. It's quite complicated, until eventually it just cuts off. There's Oreos fall down, and they move past the camera, and then it basically stops rendering here. And then inside of After Effects, you go and insert the camera again, and then you sort of match the camera with the actual scene, and then you get something like this, where it actually comes down and fits quite nicely. So there it falls off, and then there you have your actual scene revealing at the background. It's quite complicated. This could be a tutorial on its own, so I'm just trying to explain the overall process of how I made this video. So I'll change this back to 36, and I think that's pretty much it. Once all your renders and stuff are done, your final renders and stuff are done, you pretty much just render it out. There wasn't much post-processing or compositing done in this video, so didn't really need to go into that. But you just render it out, and then you go and upload it to your different formats, different platforms and stuff like that. Make different versions of them, like for Instagram, stuff like that. And then that's it. So that was a tutorial on this basic video. This basic Oreo video. Way too complicated to get in anything specific. I will be getting into more advanced stuff on the Razor video, because that video is even worse. That one's so much more complicated, but there's some really advanced stuff there for the theory junkies out there, and for the people that actually could use the information. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, I'm sure you will, you can go ahead and ask. I'll do my best to answer them. And yeah, if you want me to make any tutorials on anything specific in this video, I can do that. But I didn't want to combine like 10 different tutorials into one video and have a 10-hour video, so I try to be as brief as I could be. But that's the Oreo, the general process of how I went through it. Obviously making an advert, a fully 3D rendered advert with music and all that stuff, has a lot going in it, and I can't explain every single thing. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed, have a great day. Follow me on Instagram if you want to keep up with my stuff. You can also like me on Facebook. I do generally post my final renders. Sometimes I post test renders on there, but most of the time my life is on Instagram. And yeah, do subscribe if you enjoyed the video, give it a like, and I will see you on the next one. Have a good day. Goodbye.